Hey, Dr. Scott here, and welcome to Leading in 10, the live stream where we hope to help you amplify your impact in leading yourself and others in only 10 minutes. Today's episode is about time. It's one of the most precious resources we have, and it's often said that effective time management is the cornerstone of great leadership. But is time really as straightforward as it seems? Is it simply a linear resource we can control and manage? What if we could go beyond the traditional view of time and actually make it work for us? The answer might lie in the wisdom of the ancient Greeks. Today, we're joined by Maria Hall from Momentous, who will help us explore a deeper, more strategic approach to time management.
Thanks, Scott. Great to be with you today. Thank you.
Tell us more about the ancient Greeks. They had two distinct concepts of time.
Yes, I am a bit of a fan of the ancient Greeks. I like to read some Stoic philosophy from time to time, but this concept is not a new one, but it certainly does change our perception of time. The first principle or way of looking at time is Chronos, and apologies for the native Greek speakers out there, my pronunciation. But Chronos is actually just the passage of chronological time, sequential time. So if you think about it from a leadership perspective, you've got however many work days, you've got a full calendar, and you just basically move your body through space during the passage of time and get through the week. The other concept is Kairos, which actually means deep time. So there are certain moments, I like to call them moments that matter, in which big shifts can happen. Mm-hmm. And so Kairos is basically, when you look back at your life, what are those moments that matter? And Kairos is also an invitation for an opportunity, the opportune moment to do something.
So both of them were actually Greek gods. So Chronos was the god of time and Kairos was the god of opportunity. What I found interesting was that Chronos had this single lock of hair at the front of his head and he was bald in the back. And so you could actually grab him from the front if he was running towards you. But once you basically went by, you've lost that opportunity. So it was really the god of opportunity. It's about great timing and those sorts of things. So how does that relate to leadership? I see actually lots of parallels there.
Me too. And I think just instinctively as a person, I love to collect all these random different ideas and bring them back to coaching and put them in a way so that we can understand them and apply them daily. So I guess in my coaching practice, something that I'm seeing a lot of at the moment is overwhelm.
Yeah.
There seems to be, with executives and leaders, lots of overwhelm at the moment, and that's about the environment. And as you mentioned in the intro, no one is manufacturing more time. We have more resources, technology is developing at a really rapid state, but there is no more time. And what I'm finding with my coaching clients is the complexity is also increasing. So the problems that we are required to lead through and the problems that we are required to solve are gaining complexity over time as they progress. Even if you look at the news, some of the scandals that some companies have had of recent years, we wouldn't have dreamed of things like that happening in the past. And it is only going to get more complex and the rate of change is going to increase. And so that comes out in coaching sessions. It comes out in 360 surveys. And the way that presents sometimes is, if we think about a continuum, on one side you've got task, on the other you've got relationships. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when we get overwhelmed as human beings, we tend to look inward. Yeah. And we tend to really knuckle in and think everything's on me. I've got to really focus on tasks. And so then we let go of some of those relationships and we forget that we're actually part of a collective in whatever role that we're in. We're part of a collective network. And as humans, we're designed to be part of a network and be social creatures and work with others. But coming back to the concept of time. So if you look at the value of time, it's actually particular moments that have bigger impact than just running through your calendar, running through day by day meetings. And particularly in leadership, I'm seeing where maybe that traditional style of, okay, so I've got my calendar full and I'm running based on my calendar's controlling me. There isn't a lot of buffer time in between that. I'm running from one thing to another. And lots of my leadership conversations are booked in at a one-on-one. We might have a weekly or fortnightly check-in one-on-one. We might have a team meeting. And so before you know it, the weeks go by, they turn into months. We might have a quarterly review. The year's over and oh my goodness, all we've done is basically move chronologically through time. And maybe we actually haven't had the impact that we needed to have or could have had we seized some opportunities.
So you've stated the term complexity, which I really like in terms of this conversation. And I think hand in hand with that is uncertainty. And I think one of the concepts of time and how this relates is that it's really hard now to think forward in time. What are our jobs going to be like in 5 years' time? We have no idea. There's just so much disruption happening. So it's really hard to think about time in this linear sequence of events to plan for. And really, we have to start thinking more in terms of these opportunities. How do we create opportunities and make the most of them when they do or might happen? So I think that's part of this conversation as well, is how do you think of, rather than this linear sequence of time, thinking in terms of opportunities and how to harness them. Is that part of your coaching and dialogue?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I would start with being a little bit generous. Being a little bit generous, not just only to ourselves, but also the ether out there. Whether you're a religious person or you believe in the power of people, whatever your creed might be, let's be a little bit generous and know that not absolutely everything is within our control, and that's okay. And I'll get into why that matters in coaching very shortly. But I think also if you change your perception of time and you really are open, the first thing is to be open to those Kairos moments, those big opportunities, those perfect moments to make a connection and have an impact, being open to them. And so that actually means stepping away from a very rigid and controlled day where everything is based on your calendar and your task list. That's the first step, I would say, being open to them. And also knowing that sometimes trusting that even if you fall behind in that calendar or that task list, having these actual big shifts or these moments that matter can actually leap you forward. So you can have months of momentum happen in moments if you allow yourself to and be a bit generous. So that's the first step, I would say.
So in terms of moments that matter, can you give me some concrete examples from your coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So this ties into that second principle, which I would talk about, which is taking a genuine interest and being authentic and caring with your people. For example, I worked with a leader who was feeling overwhelmed. And I think without upsetting anyone, particularly in women, we sometimes get that imposter syndrome as leaders. We think, am I enough? And will they find me out? And things like that. And so she was operating in an environment that was, as I said, increasingly complex, and the pressures, being asked to do more with less in terms of resources. And so in the 360 review, something that came out was a little bit of aloofness and coldness and not super connected with team members. And it's true that some people in organizations, they only actually know what the leaders look like because the annual report comes out once a year. They haven't actually had a conversation, or particularly in very large ones. And so we did a deep dive to that feedback, and we covered off on, when you're very overwhelmed, what does that feel like for you? What might other people perceive that to look like? And so basically, if you imagine a situation, there's a complement of staff around the office. And if I'm that leader, I'm literally rushing into my desk, not saying good morning with anyone, not taking the time to connect. And even just that small chatter is opportunities, because that small chat opens windows. Opportunities present themselves to connect with people and work out what's going on. And so that kind of behavior, and then really just task focused. In actual fact, the way that the world is moving at the moment, and if we are adopting a coaching leadership style, it's not on us to be everything for everyone, to solve all the problems, to have all the answers. If we're a little bit generous and really connect with people, not only will we find Kairos opportunities for ourselves, but for others, so that they can build a bit of agency, they can solve problems, they can upskill themselves. Because in the future, the problems that we're facing, we can't just dust off whatever we did last year and repeat it. We're going to have some really innovative and clever problem solving happen.
So in a way, you're boosting situational awareness that's through these connections, that's going to help you identify these opportunities that you can make the most of. Is that kind of summarizing what you're saying?
Absolutely, Scott. So we also know that discretionary effort is at all-time lows globally at the moment in workplaces. And so I don't know about you, but I would certainly put a little bit more effort and energy in if I felt that genuine connection from a leader.
Yeah,
and I think that's what we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah. Connection is everything. It's like the number one predictor of nearly every metric of success. So yeah, definitely a balance, task focus with people focus is an amazing strategy. Any other quick tips before we go?
So I would just say, be curious, take the time. If you're waiting in line for coffee, or you're going about your day, invite questions from others, be curious. Because often as leaders as well, when we get information around what's actually going on at the customer facing level and the people that deliver the work at the client level. It's actually filtered sometimes through many layers. And so really connecting with people and taking the time to get to know them and being curious will actually provide you a better connection with the customer. And in doing so also, you'll be able to, quickly scan for problems that might be developing or disruptors to your market as well. Being curious, I would say, is another one. And then, as I said, giving people some agency to solve their own problems rather than rushing in as a leader and thinking you've got to have all the answers.
Perfect. Final remarks.
When all is said and done, people aren't going to remember the one-on-ones they had or the quarterly meets that they had. What they will remember from you as a leader is really stopping and connecting with them and taking those big moments that matter and giving them your full attention one-on-one.
Perfect. Thank you. And I was just going to say that you can reach out to Maria at momentous.com.au. Is that the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can add me on LinkedIn, Maria Hall. But yeah, the website, definitely.
And I'm at scottbolland.com. Thank you so much, Maria.
Thanks, Scott.